Hello and welcome to episode number 5 of the Blazor e-commerce series. Today we are going to implement product variants. A new name. Last time I used additions, and this time I actually wanted to implement the web storage or the local storage and pop-up notifications, but you really got me last time, because the thing is, you see the implementations here already. We were able to choose another edition, but the prices did not change. And now with the implementations, you will learn in the next, I don't know, half an hour, let's see. You will then know how to do this thing here, so we can select another edition or another variant. Now this is the new term I learned. Then the prices will change. It's a bit more complicated, and I gotta say, it's not the perfect model, of course, for an e-commerce website. I wanted to keep this simple, and I think that we are already we spend too much time on the backend and the database design and so on, because here you can see that this thing, the entity attribute value model, is a data model that is, I think, used in e-commerce websites a lot. And with this you can really design your database in a way where a product can have an infinite number of attributes and values and so on. But what I want to do with our simple e-commerce website here is to use products. And as you can see here, this product, for instance, there is no other variant than this single one. But here with this book, there are different variants, and this is the only addition here. We have products and product variants, and now we move the prices also to the variants. So every product needs a variant, but you will see this in a minute. Another one here is Half-Life 2, for instance. We've got it for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. Here it is. And the other ones are only available for one single, or there's only one single edition. Here the camera, for instance, so there's only one price. Okay, anyways, you will see it step by step in a minute, but before we start, I want to thank all my supporters. Thank you very much for buying me a coffee. If you want to support me and this channel and this series as well, maybe consider buying me a coffee. The link is in the video description, or at least maybe you just want to click the like button and subscribe to my channel. It does make a difference, and I want to make an online course out of this series. In this course, it's not that chaotic, meaning last time we made products and additions, and now we're changing that and adding product variants, and we have to remove some code. If you want to get early access to this upcoming online course about making an e-commerce website with Blazor, WebAssembly, and .NET, then maybe subscribe to my newsletter, and then you will see the videos earlier than other users. Okay, with that out of the way, let's begin. I see in Visual Studio, let me just find Visual Studio first. There it is. There are a lot of changes, so let me undo all these changes, and then we will start from the beginning, or from the last lecture, the state of the last lecture. Alright, so undo changes, yes, and also delete all these files here. And now let me also delete the database in the, here you can see that, no, you don't see it because it's on the other monitor, Jesus. But let me delete the database here, close existing connections. And then I will update the database with the current state, because then it's like I am starting from the last episode. So here are some errors. Great. .NET EF database update, and then we should have the database of the last lecture. Don't forget to take a sip of your coffee. Build succeeded, and the database should be there now. Refresh. close everything. There's our Blazing Shop database. Okay, so we've got the database from the last lecture. Here you can see we've got the editions and also the edition product table here, which was the joining entity for our many-to-many relationship. But now we will change that because we want to have specific prices for every edition or every product variant. So now we remove actually the many-to-many relationship and implement a one-to-many relationship again. And this relationship would be products and product variants. So we start by adding a new class, and in this case it's product variant. And this thing now will consist first of all of a product. So product, and what you can already do is add the JSON ignore attribute here, because we will send the variants to the client, and if we don't add the attribute, then we will get this cycle error again, and we don't want to have this one, of course. So, and we actually don't need the product here in the variants because we have it already in the result of our web service call then. But anyways, first the attributes or the properties. We have a product, we have a product ID, and then we also have the edition, because every variant will consist of a product and an edition. So there's this combination of a product and the edition, and that's why we also need the edition ID here. And these two, the product ID and the edition ID, will then be a composite primary key. We will configure this in the data context, but first let's create the model. And so we've got the product ID and the edition ID, and now the next part is interesting. We move the prices from the, let's call it base product, to the variant, because every different edition or every different variant has another price. For instance, the ebook is cheaper than the paperback and the audiobook is more expensive, and that's actually what you guys wanted, right? So you wanted to have different prices for different variants. And this should be our model already. So we've got the product and the product ID, the edition with the edition ID, and then the price and the original price. And now back to the product here, we don't have a list of editions. We will have a list of product variants, and we call this thing variants. And we can also initialize this already to or with a new list of product variant. And then the last thing regarding the models is the edition here. We don't have a list of products anymore. So the, let's say the models or the design should now be, we've got a product, the base product with the title, description, and so on. And every product has a list of variants, and it should have at least one variant. So the default variant, if you want. And this then is the variant. It got a product ID for the base product. For instance, we've got the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So this is the product, and then we've got editions, and the edition then would be just the name paperback or audiobook or ebook or whatever. And now for every combination of an ID and an edition, there's a price and an original price. So this is the change of our models. And of course, we have to change our data seeding for that. So we have to go to the data context here. And the very first thing is the composite key now, the composite primary key for the product variant. And we can do this right on top here. We use the model builder for that. Then we want to do something with our product variant entity. And we want to tell entity framework that this thing now, oh Jesus, that this thing now has a certain key. And we do this with a lambda expression again and say the new key consists of the product ID and the edition ID. So we're doing that to make sure that there's only one entry in the database table possible with this product ID and this specific edition ID, and only this combination has a specific price. Okay, that's already it for the composite key, but we have to change a lot more. As you can see here, the products don't have a price anymore, so let's remove the price for every product. So remove this thing here, and also this one, and this here, this, and Diablo 2, and the last one would be Day of the Tentacle. Then edition product can be removed. Just remember that there's a share type entity for many-to-many relationships. I mean, it's great that you learned that in the last episodes. And now regarding the edition, I want to add another edition, the default edition. Let's say default with ID 1, and the others then would be ID 2, 3, 4 and above, like that. And then of course we need the variants, and I want to spare you the hassle. I just copy and paste all the product variants that I have prepared, and please have a look in the GitHub repository, because there you will get all the product variants, and then you can also copy and paste the code. So these are the variants, and as you can see here, product ID 1 is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the book, and it's available as paperback. You can see it here, the edition is paperback, as ebook and as audiobook with different prices. Then I've got default product variants. Well, here it's a paperback and here as well. But then I think that's the camera and the Super Nintendo and so on. These have the edition default. And then this is Half-Life 2, which is available for PC, PlayStation and Xbox. And the other games are just available for PC. So these are the product variants, and I hope these are all the changes for our models and the database. And I would just say we try this now. So let me see, we are in the correct directory. Make sure to be in Blazing Shop server, and then we can add a new migration with .NET EF migrations. Add product variants, and now let's see. So we're going to build this, and I think the data will be lost. Build failed. Oh, of course it failed, because the problem is now that the client already mentions that there are no editions anymore, no prices for the products. And I think in the product list, it's exactly the same. Let's have a look at the server. Yeah, it's the same here. Okay, so let's change the plan. We do not add the migrations. We will already make some implementations here in the product service and the client. And then in the end, we start the migration. Exciting stuff. So we start with the product service. This is actually pretty easy. Now the thing is, we included the additions in the last episode only when we wanted to see the details of a specific product. Now this is different. We can, of course, or we have to include the variants first, but we also want to see the names of the variants or the specific additions. So there's another thing, another function we can use, and that's then include. And this is actually an include used on the variants. So we first include the variant, and then the variant has a list of additions, and that's why we can use then include here for the variants and to get the additions. So that's how we fix that one. And another thing we can already add here is the include of the variants for all products and the products by category, because maybe you remember when you when you go back to the beginning of the video, you can see that we see in the list of products there was a text like the price is starting at $9.99, and this should only appear if we have more than just one variant of a product. And to make this possible, to be able to do this, of course, we already need the variants in the overview of all products, in the list of all products or the list of products by category. Otherwise, the variants are not included, and then we are not able to do this. So get all products gets the include variants, and the same here for get products by category. We include the variants, and then we get the products by a certain category. We don't need the additions here. If you want to display the addition or the available additions, of course you can. You have to implement you have to include them here as well, but otherwise that's sufficient here. So we change the service by including the variants, and then here for the single product also the addition, and that's the fix for the server. And already the client. So let's go to the product list first, because I think this is a bit easier. We've got the original price here and the price. And what I want to do, of course, you can change that. It's just a bit more implementation. But again, to keep things simpler here, I want to display just the price. And to do that now, I want to implement a new function, and this function will be called getPriceText for the current product, because don't forget we are in a for each loop here, so we have a certain product available, and for this product we will display the price as a certain text. If we only have one variant, then we display the text of this specific variant. If not, I want to get the lowest price and display a text like starting at and then the lowest price. And to do that, we go to the code block down here, and we add this function, private string get price text products, and then we get the variants first, which are the product variants. Now, there could be the case, of course, that the count of the variants is 0, and in this case we simply return an empty string like that. But if the count is if the count is exactly 1, that's what I wanted to do, right? If the count is exactly 1, then we simply return the price as text. So return US dollars, and then we say variance 0, it's the very first one, and then the price like that. but then we get the lowest price with variance, and then there's this beautiful function here, min, and we use this function for the price here, and that's how we get the lowest price, and then we return something like starting at US dollars and then min price, of course. Okay, this should be it. So we use the getPriceText function here again, which gets the product as an argument. We get all the variants of this product. If it's 0, then we simply return an empty string. If it's exactly 1, then we exactly display this price. And if we get several variants or more than just one variant, then we find the lowest price and say starting at the lowest price. So far the product list, and then to the product details, and these are a bit more complicated, but I'd say let's just do this. So the very first thing is, of course, the select drop down here that you have learned in the last episode. This doesn't work like that anymore because we do not have the additions here. Now these are variants, and we can simply change this thing here. So instead of additions, we now use variants. And now I told you that you will learn this in a later lecture. So here we are. We have to use some kind of variables here for the select drop down. And with Blazor, we do it like that. We use the add character and then say bind, and then we bind this to a variable that we will find in the code block. And let's just say we have a current edition ID, and we add this current edition ID as well down here. It's an integer. The current edition ID is 1 in the beginning, and then we can bind this thing here. So when we select one here, you will see it in a second with the option tag here, then this current edition ID will be set. But first we have to change this thing here. We don't have additions again, we have variants, and the variant now has an addition name. So actually what we can do is variant addition, and remember we included the additions for the variant in our service. Where is it again? Here, the product service. That's the wrong one. That's the client product service, but here's the server product service. That's why we can use the addition now on the client, okay? So that's why we have the addition and then the name. That's the only reason actually to use or to include the addition. And now we can display the name. And regarding the option, it's actually standard HTML. We've got the value attribute, and the value will be set to variant edition ID. And now as soon as we select one option here, the edition ID will be used to set the current edition ID. So these will be the same values. And I think that's it for the drop down. But regarding the prices, we have to implement a little bit more. And that would be a new function, get selected variant. And with that selected variant, we can then get the actual price. Okay, so let's have a look. First, I want to add this function here. Product variant is the return type. Get selected variant. So again, not get product variant, get selected variant. And this is actually pretty simple. The variant that will be available is product variants, first or default, and then the variant where the edition ID is the current edition ID, and then we simply return this variant. So as soon as a variant is selected, we change the current edition ID, and then down here now I will use this function to get the selected variant and then get the selected original price and price. One more thing I want to add here is that we initialize the current edition ID with 1, but this is not always true. For instance, with the books, we've got paperback as default edition, and then the ID would be 2. So what I want to add here then is I want to have a look on initialization. I want to have a look if there are any variants already available for a certain product. And we do this with this little if condition here. Then I want to set the current edition ID to this proper value. So current edition ID would be then product variants, and the first one, and then edition ID, like that. So with that, we make sure that with a selected or with a chosen product, we get the correct edition ID of the very first variant. So I don't know, for Half-Life 2, for instance, it's the ID 5, and that's the PC. If you wouldn't do it like that, you would have the current edition ID 1, and that wouldn't work with the select dropdown here because it's just not available. I hope that's not too confusing, but let's continue and then we recap everything, and I hope that these things will be clear then. So we've got the get selected variant method. We make sure that we get the proper current edition ID, and now with that we change the HTML a little bit. The very first thing is another if condition where we make sure that the get selected variant is not null, because this could be the case because of the life cycle of this Razor component here. Could be that the variant is not loaded, but we already want to access a price of a variant, and the variant then is null, and this would crash. So we just make sure that we have a variant. And now regarding the variant or the price, we can just say get selected variant and give me the original price of the selected variant. And the same is true here and also here. Okay, so again, when we load the product details component here, we first see the select dropdown here for every available variant. If there are more than just one variance, that if we have one variant, then we only want to display this single one and no dropdown. So again, we load the details and then we display the select dropdown. If we get more than one variant for a certain product, then we bind the current edition ID, this thing here, for the select dropdown, and then we start a for each loop for every variant, display an option, and when we select an option, we set the variant edition ID to the current edition ID, and we display the name of the edition, of course, and then we want to display a price, and the price will be changed depending on the selected edition, and for that we added this function here, get selected variant, and with that function we go to the product, then access the variants, and then get the variant where the edition ID equals the current edition ID, return this variant, and that's Now, and that's then the variant that we need for the prices. Okay, I hope I made this clear. If not, just write it in the comments and I try to do my best to explain this again. But I think you get the idea. Okay, so we can save everything. I think I already saved everything, and let's build this again to see if we got any errors left. But I think this should be it actually. Building. Now we succeeded. Okay, and let's add the migration then for the product variants. Yep, loss of data, I'm sure about that, because now when we have a look, you refresh, we see of course that the addition product table is still available. We haven't updated the database, of course. So let's have a look at the product variants migration file. Yeah, drop table. Okay, no, of course we lose this data here because we're dropping the table. We also drop some columns of the products table. We create the new column product variant, of course, and we should see that exactly the primary key here now consists of the product ID and the edition ID. Foreign keys are set properly, and we update data because we changed the available editions, and we insert new data, of course. Looks good to me. So let's update the database now. .NET EF database update. Now we have a look at the Management Studio, refresh the database, and these are the correct tables. So let's have a look. We've got the editions, paperback, but I actually wanted a default edition. There it is now. Okay, it was still open, so that's why it's showed me the old result. Okay, but anyways, this is the list of editions now. And regarding the products, this should change. We have no price here anymore, but these are our products. Is public. This is something we will fix when we add an admin dashboard, where we then can choose if a product is already public or not. But it's more important, of course, that we see all our products. And now the new model here is the product variant. You see that product ID and edition ID is both is the composite primary key. And when we have a look, we see these beautiful combinations of IDs and also the prices. All right, this looks good. I would say let's start the application with .NET Watch Run. All right, there it is. Let's open the console. Just have a look. Let's reload this thing, and we can close these tabs here. So this already works. We see the price for the products that only have one variant, and we also see the prices or the lowest price for the products that have more than just one variant. And here's also the result. Let me make this a little bit bigger maybe. That's also the result in the developer tools. We see the different variants here. And the same here. That's nice. All right. And now if we go to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, we have our drop down. We get the single product with the different variants. And then we can choose ebook, which is available for $7.99. The audiobook that has an original price and a new price. So this works just fine. Ready Player One has only one edition, so this is the price that is available. And Half-Life 2, for instance, is available for PC, for PlayStation, and for the Xbox. Alright, that's it. Again, sorry if this was a bit confusing. I hope you get the idea and got something out of that. If so, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel, and maybe even click the bell icon to get a notification as soon as a new episode is uploaded. If you learned a lot and you think, well, this was amazing, then maybe consider buying me a coffee. That would be really, really nice. Thank you so much for that. Link is in the video description, and the link for the newsletter subscription is also in the video description for early access to the upcoming online course. And if you already want to dive deeper into Blazor WebAssembly, maybe you want to have a look at the Blazor WebAssembly Full Stack Bootcamp, an online course I created where users can register, have their accounts and authenticate with JSON Web Tokens, and then build an army of fighters. It's an online browser game, essentially a classic online browser game where you can create knights, mages, archers, and so on. And with your army, you can fight against other users, climb the leaderboard, and become the best warrior of them all. If you're interested, have a look at the info card. There's a 2-hour preview available here on YouTube, or consider getting the online course on Udemy. Link is in the video description. Thank you very much for watching, and I see you next time. Take care.